Welcome to Revenue Mind, where revenue leaders get real about mental health. I'm Jolie. Stick around for honest stories, practical insights, and why well-being is the real bottom line. Let's dive in. Hey, y'all. Welcome to Revenue Mind, a podcast where revenue leaders chat all things mental health. I'm Jolie, your host, and with us is Freddie. Welcome, Freddie.
Hey, how are you today?
Good. It's pretty cool to be chatting with you since, we've been on the same sort of team the past couple years.
I agree. I like any chance get to geek out with someone on subjects like this. I'm happy, and we'll get to know each other even more in front of everyone else.
First of all, congratulations on your book. I know it was a huge undertaking, and would love to hear, the story behind it. I have some specific questions, but if you just want to kind of chat about it, anything you got, we'd love to hear it.
So I'm going to be a one and done author. I think that when I first started doing this, I was probably not emotionally ready for exactly how much work it was going to be. It is a monumental task to try and get through a book. I think once will be enough for me. But I decided if I was going to do it once, I was going to make sure I did it right. I had two wonderful co-authors, worked on it for at least a year and a half. And it was really all about collectivism. And I think a lot of people are familiar with the concept of a collective. A lot of times it seems like they're referring to it in terms of Middle Ages feudalism or something. But we really think that the collectivism is got a chance to rise again. And I think a lot of that is driven by the fact that technology, that allows people to collaborate and think and work collectively, is approaching the cost of zero. And that unlocks a really, really, really interesting business model that, for a lot of MBAs, is a footnote for them. And we feel like we've been able to execute the collective model, a true collective model. A Chameleon Collective. It's something that resulted in us being on the Inc. 5000 4 times now, and I'm sure we'll end up on it again. And I used to think that the way that we worked was kind of crazy when we first started doing it. And it was very unusual. Now I think it's the best thing I've ever had a chance to be a part of. And I think for the book, for me, if I really look back at my life in 20 years or something, companies come and go. Chameleon Collective, may be forgotten if it's not around or in its current format. But if I could really think about the impact that I want to leave on this world, I think if I could help 10,000 companies, form collectives, that would probably be the coolest thing I've ever been involved in my entire life.
I love that. I think the concept of legacies, like leaving something behind is something I very much aspire to as well. And I like that you're not just saying, "Oh, I wanna, sell this and sail around the Mediterranean for a year, or, the rest of my life," but that you wanna kinda pay it forward. So that's really great. I love that. So, without the book, forget the title, the book, your amazing follower count. Who are you when none of that's in the room?
Great question. I'm probably a lot more complicated than most people realize. I think if you've ever heard anyone say this before, I'm both an introvert and an extrovert at the same time. So I have a version of myself that I'm able to kind of project out to the world when I need to and want to. But honestly, I'm very happy just kind of being by myself with my wife and our Pomeranian sometimes. And when I'm not at work, I'm either spending a lot of time out in the garden, where we have a giant woodland forest behind our house, and I've been building a huge woodland garden, which is quite unusual. So not like the traditional around the house thing, but like all out in the woods, and I love that. I spend a lot of time working with technology. My biggest passions are probably I'm really enjoying working with a lot of the AI tools that are out right now. I think it's a groundbreaking time, and I find that super intellectually stimulating. And the other one most people don't know is, well, it didn't get, I think, the landing that I would have loved for it. I actually still really believe in VR. I think it's 10 years ahead of, behind where everyone tried to hype it into a couple of years ago. But I'm very involved in that scene, and I'm building a lot of, VR experiences. And it's another place I feel like I get to be really innovative and break new ground. And when I'm not, I guess, working with clients and kind of the places where people normally see me. I'm like kind of a tinkerer. I want to like tinker out in the garden, or I want to tinker with this project, or I want to, tinker with, some other thing that I'm working on. And, I think sometimes people like really love like having downtime. I'm just kind of not one of those people, and so I just want to be busy all the time, honestly. I really feed off it. And I think for me, work has never really felt like work. So sometimes even like my hobbies, some people are like that feels like work. It's not work to me. I'm just like I find it really interesting and exciting, and I've always kind of been this way, honestly. So I just want to be constantly intellectually stimulated. I'm sure my wife would wish that I wasn't like that all the time, but it's just kind of how I'm wired.
I totally get that. My husband and I call it bulldozing. We just can't sit still. We just
My
it's
wife
like,
was like, "What'd you do if we took like this and this and this off your plate?" And I was like, if I'm being honest, I would probably just stick more things back on my plate, just different things. You know what I mean? So, and maybe that will change over time. It doesn't, some people have even said to me like, "Oh, will you be able to retire one day?" I want to be clear. I will actually. I don't have an issue stepping away from that, but retirement doesn't mean that I'm not doing stuff all the time. I feel like I've got a million hobbies that I wish I could spend more time, working on. The one that always surprises people, by the way, if I could retire tomorrow, you know what I would do? I would go to culinary school. Just because. Just because I love food and cooking so much, I would go to culinary school and get a culinary degree just because.
I love that. Do you like to cook at home?
I do love to cook at home, yeah. And my wife has surpassed me the last couple of years. Like, so I got to go to culinary school, because I'm a one upper and I've got to beat her now. Not that I'm competitive. All jokes aside, we actually said we go together, which I think is really cool. So she said when we retire, we're both going to go to culinary school together, and just be something we can do together and just geek out making food.
That sounds so fun. I actually might maybe I'll do a cooking lesson, just like a very mini version of that.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
we've done some of those. We think they're great, and I think I remember my father saying to me once when I was young, eating is the only ritual of enjoyment that renews itself 3 times a day, and it always kind of like stuck in my head, and I can imagine a future where I spend maybe a couple hours a day just trying to whip up some amazing dish, and that being really intellectually stimulating. Frankly, something new every day.
where do you think that all came from? Like that kind of intrinsic motivation, need to be busy. Where do you think that derived from?
I definitely think it was in my household. I mean, my father was a bit of a workaholic himself, and I think he was a tinkerer. He was always starting or running businesses. And when he wasn't that, he loved his boat, and he was an engineer when he was younger. And he would go tinker around in the engine room, literally just go muck around. Like didn't know what he was doing, but just get in there. I mean, he knew what he was doing, but he didn't have a reason to be there. But he'd find a reason to be there if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And go tinker around in there. And I think I think I got that tinkerer bug from him. It's funny actually. I was talking to someone the last week, and they were asking me. They have a lot of entrepreneurial aspirations, and they're based in the Philippines, and they just someone that works for us, and I really love their mindset. And they're like, how do you like how did you? He was asking me, how do you kind of get good with all this stuff? And I said, I had to be honest. I can't pretend that like I found all this stuff. Like it was just in my household. I have to recognize I consider myself exceptionally lucky that I had, a pretty kind of an entrepreneur's entrepreneur in my household. And then he was a huge inspiration. My mother was also an entrepreneur. I grew up around, meeting these kind of entrepreneurs and them inspiring me. But I said to him, that doesn't mean other people can't get the same experience. You just have to choose to have this experience. And I think we do live in this kind of incredible world where entrepreneurialism, certainly in the United States, is very celebrated. And so if other people say, "Well, hey, I didn't have that childhood," and again, I fully recognize how fortunate I am was there, but people can you can go out there, you can read the books, there you can join the groups. There's just a million places that you can, if you want to just absorb entrepreneurial energy nonstop, it's there, and there's no barrier to entry, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. My parents were the classic, work in XYZ profession for 40 years. My dad was a traveler, litigator. My mom, actually, she did have her own business. She was a LCSW with her own practice. So that in itself was, I think that was very, part of my journey where I got very inspired by that, being a working mom, with she was she was a high conflict divorce therapist. So she has some pretty gnarly cases. So it was just amazing watching her career over the years. So your book talks a lot about, chasing a better way to work. So over the course of 10 years, what was the old way costing you before you let yourself call it a cost?
I think that the old way, what it cost me, and I think everyone has a different cost, to be clear. In my case, I think what it was costing me was happiness. I didn't like not being able to control my own future and destiny in a traditional corporate job, but I also didn't really like assuming all the risk, and the full burden of being an entrepreneur and being the one person kind of throwing themselves in the fire. I always joke, it's how I got this crap haircut, and I just don't need that kind of stress in my life anymore. And so for me, collectivism was a way of finding other people willing to, work together where we could all be the boss, we could all control our future, but we all accept part of the risk together so the full burden doesn't fall on me. And that was really appealing to me. But if you talk to like other members of Chameleon Collective, some maybe were never entrepreneurs before, and they just wanted it because they were interested in maybe going out and having more control over their future, and the way they worked and who they worked with and how they worked. And it made it less scary to go do it with other people. Some people just wanted, there wasn't even that important to them to have an entrepreneurial venture. They just wanted more control over their lives, or they wanted to feel that more of the money and the value that they created for others ended up in their pocket and not, in some corporation. And so I think what's interesting is there's a lot of different motivators I've seen that will attract people to collectivism, but I think all of them ultimately come back to one thing. There just feels like there's something fundamentally wrong in the system right now. I don't think. Look, I'm a diehard capitalist. I've been obviously been had a great positive impact on my life, but you can't help but look at it and not go, something's wrong. And especially the last few years, it seems like more and more wealth is concentrated in fewer and fewer people. The disparity is a real issue, and I think trying to build systems of business that are good for more people, or as we kind of phrased it, like making capitalism work for everyone, I think is a really positive thing. And that was probably the biggest motivator, is like that, again, no matter what angle you come in from, you get this sense that there has to be a better way than whatever we're doing right now. I just think most people weren't willing to make that leap of saying, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna have a whack at fixing it. And I'm sure a lot of people have tried and failed. And we've certainly had our stumbles along the way, by the way, and we continue to iterate to this day.
Oh, for sure. I feel like, or I think that the spirit of entrepreneurship is finding that gap.
Mhm.
Some of the best founders that I've worked with see a problem and they solve for it. They see the gap, and the gap isn't that easy to see,
Mm.
especially when you're in your own world a lot of the time. So that's really cool.
I think this is kind of the superpower of a lot of entrepreneurs, right? It's just this a willingness to kind of spot something that other people might kind of look at it and just keep walking, and they're willing to stop and address it. Worth noting, this is also one of the things I consider really exciting about AI technology right now, is that a lot of entrepreneurs are, idea people, and especially smaller entrepreneurs where you don't have the capital, you don't have the resources. And I feel like these kind of technologies are kind of removing the moat or the barriers that stopped a lot of people from going, I can have a crack at trying to solve that. And things that may have felt insurmountable before maybe feel a little bit more surmountable and possible now. And I think that's one of the things I find so exciting about it. It's both a scary time to be an entrepreneur, because and frankly for any of us, because the world is so in flux. But there is opportunity in chaos. You know. And there's opportunity in these moments, I think, when people can figure out how to harness this stuff for good.
Can you expand on the opportunity and chaos? I love that line.
Yeah, I think that when the world is a little messy, whether that is, geopolitical type things, whether they're socioeconomic, whether it's technology upheaval probably being the one where I feel the most comfortable operating, where there's like some kind of tectonic shift in the way that people are working or the way that people are using technology or just consumer or customer likes or dislikes. And when those things happen, a bunch of companies start failing and a bunch of new companies start succeeding, right? And I think that if you play it right, it's those change moments is when there's actually the big opportunity to make leaps forward, right? Because what happens is the entrenched people who are very successful and you're maybe the people you looked at for a long time and said, company X, Y, and Z, like those are the people, right? Like they're really kicking ass and making big money. I could never take those kind of people on. When the chaos starts happening, they get really scared about changing the plan that's worked so well for them so well. And then I'd say that, some of the new people have hypotheses on what, the future might look like, and they're going to try and capitalize on that. And I think if you can present yourself as a strong path forward and bluntly get lucky enough to pick one of the right paths forward, there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of opportunity to kind of come out of nowhere, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think even like when I think the Chameleon Collective first started coming together, I think we had some of that, right? There was a feeling that people weren't liking the way that they were working. The concept of becoming an independent or fractional worker was on the rise, but no one had quite formulated it yet. The technologies that enabled it were just starting to emerge in a way that made it all kind of perfect. And I think just this kind of like sense that people were looking for something new, and then frankly, COVID, while being an insanely tragic scenario or event would probably be a better way of saying that. It did accelerate the way that people changed how they were working, and that was chaos. And we know, and we those were probably the years we grew the most and the fastest. So now I think we're in another period of that, and us and other and other firms out there and other entrepreneurs and frankly all of us are going to have to now see if we can navigate this next set of chaos, which somehow feels even wilder than the last ones. Do you ever feel like we've been in some kind of like crazy science fiction film for about like the last 5 to 10 years? It doesn't, it's so weird all the time lately that I just, yeah, it feels like we're in some kind of sci-fi film. I also want on the record that as much as I love AI, if I could put it all back in the box and it would never happen, I would be totally okay with that. Yeah. I'm not, it's very scary stuff. And, again, hopefully we're navigating well, but again, if I could make it go away, I would, but it's not going away, so we can't. And so I've chosen to embrace it and find opportunity in chaos.
If you don't mind me asking, what scares you about it?
It's the unknown, right? I mean, I think a lot of people could have their jobs displaced. In fact, not could, probably would, and we're already seeing that. I am a techno optimist, though. I tend to believe that a whole new wave of work is will be created. Problem is, just being really honest, it may not be created for the same people. And so it's not like we're saying all the people that will be disrupted, oh, you're going to get the new jobs. It'll probably be a different batch of people, unfortunately. And so that's kind of scary. I do worry that the technology is so powerful that it will be consolidated in the hands of a smaller, very, very wealthy set of people who may not have the best interests of the rest of us at heart and almost certainly won't do. And then that makes me nervous. I love free enterprise, but I worry that the government will need to be more involved in this just to make sure that it doesn't create an even bigger disparity in society than is today. Those are the things I worry about. The flip to this is I think it unlocks potential to do things we've never dreamt of. We're doing things today, and I'm getting to work on things today that I've talked about for years and have never been able to do because I didn't have the time, money, or resources. and I think that's super exciting. But there's still going to be a lot of people that aren't going to benefit in that way. For what it's worth, I'm trying to actually help as many people as possible navigate this transition and teach as many people to use this technologies for their own benefit. But I don't think there's enough people out there doing that, and then not enough people are going to maybe be able to navigate this one, and that's scary.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think when there's an opportunity for the disparity between the haves and have-nots, some people tend to take advantage of it, which is scary because AI is just a new frontier of the not the same story, but different versions of the story.
Exactly right.
So your book says no one should carry it alone. What carries you? And are you good at letting them?
Great question. So the idea behind no one should carry it alone was this idea that collectivism moves from this kind of genius in a million helpers model, and looks ultimately for we people. It's this. We talk a lot here about moving away from the concept of recruiting me people and moving to people that are we people, and we people are willing to share that burden. When I think about what is it that I tend to carry, and am I willing to share it? So I would say that the stuff that I'm good at sharing with others, or at least I'd like to believe so, and I certainly work at it every day, is trying to think about the different and right people that should be handling moving the company and the business forward, right? So I believe in specialists, and I think, hey, there's the right person for the right job, and I try and take on that, try and share that out with everyone, because I have a strong willingness to believe, hey, I'm not the right guy for everything, right? The thing that I'm not good at sharing with others is sometimes when things get really stressful, like the world we're in right now, I think sometimes I get stressed by those things, and I will, kind of quote unquote try and save the world on my own. And I have this tendency to be like, okay, I don't want to stress everyone else in the collective with this. It's a really stressful subject. No one else, I think to myself, no one would want to work on this. I'll go take on this really hairy, messy, horrible thing that no one else wants to do. And that's actually not the right way to handle it. Something I've actually been reflecting on a lot lately, that, I preach collectivism, all the time. And then sometimes I kind of don't practice what I preach there when it's things that I find stressful, and I need to be better at that. And so that's something that I want to learn how to share with others more, and say, hey, look, I know this is the hot potato that I didn't think anyone wanted to do, but I'm going to ask you to help share the hot potato with me, versus the stuff that's not quite so stressful, you know? I don't know what that is if it's something, or I just don't want to ask because I feel like I know people don't want to, no one really likes the hot potato, or, I don't know. But it's something I got to work on.
Oh, I totally get that. I'm terrible at asking for help. Just
Yeah.
period. I remember being in algebra. What was it? My mom always has this example. So I have dyscalculia, a math learning disability, and my verbal was strong enough to the point where it usually gets diagnosed around first grade. Mom
Mm.
got diagnosed 10th grade.
Hmm.
So I didn't know I had a problem. But so just in general, I just have a really tough time asking for help. I wanna take it all on, like, "I can do this. I got this," that grit, that kinda just go get 'em mentality, but sometimes you just gotta ask for help, and, like, personally, I don't know if you feel it's like it sends, especially being, a founder of Chameleon, like, not that it makes you look weak, but it's like, "Oh, man, like, the founder can't handle this on his own?" Like, is there any sort of that feeling?
Yeah, I think sometimes when there are the hairiest problems out there, first off, sometimes you just maybe you want to deal with them so no one else has to, because you don't want to talk about the fact that they're even problems. I think that sometimes I get I worry a lot. So like I'm a bit of a futurist, and I like to look at the horizon a lot. And so sometimes I think that I worry about things that other people maybe aren't worrying about. And sometimes I think that I'm in the right because I see things that I think I see things that other people are not seeing, and that's fine. But I think the mistake that I need to work on is when I see those things, I need to come back to others and say, "Hey, let's work on these things together," versus, "Hey, I saw this thing. I've been working on it for 3 weeks, and let me tell you about it now that I've been working on it for 3 weeks." And that's not collectivism, and that's something I'm working on.
Like, my whole thing is work-life balance and anti-burnout and talking to revenue leaders about mental health and what they do, to kinda take a step back and maybe take a vacation, and not work to the brink where it's like, "Oh, man, we need vacation." Or like preempting it versus, going to Cane's for a week and maybe it wasn't vacation, but you got to, let let off some steam a little bit. And I kinda it's like that we try and build something that we are living up to it, but we're a little hypocritical. At least that I feel like I can be hypocritical at times. So it's really this human psychology is so fascinating sometimes.
When you talk about finding work-life balance, I just had a flashback. So I used to do this podcast. I still do it, just not as frequently as I used to, called Oh Ship. And it's all about talking to other entrepreneurs about kind of oh ship moments of when they went, kind of things went wrong and how they dealt with it. And it has this kind of whole faux nautical theme, and it was great fun. But in the very beginning, we used to film it on the back of my friend's boat. And so one of my favorite episodes, probably not for the audience, but I always think it was funny in hindsight, was Ben and I were talking, and we would pick sometimes a subject 5 minutes before then we'd start recording. We just like, yeah, let's talk about this, and we just turn on the camera and just let it rip. And we had no editor, and we would just do everything live. And we decide that we're going to talk about work-life balance. And if you watch it and go back, you can actually like even zoom in on my face sometimes, and you can see that I basically have a full blown existential crisis on the podcast when I realize that I am the last person on earth that should ever be talking about work life balance. And so, and it's like, you just see this moment of panic hit me about 20 minutes in, going, why did I pick this subject? This was the worst thing that I could ever do because he's forcing me to talk through my balance. And I'm realizing my balance is rubbish. Now, I want to be clear, you know, that's not, when I think about the collective model, I think a lot of people will choose it to find better work life balance. I chose it to have more freedom to work on all the things I wanted to do the way I wanted to work on them. But yeah, so I actually, one of my key collaborators just said to me, he goes, I haven't taken a vacation this year. If you got something on the calendar, and I was like, no, I need to get something on the calendar. So yeah, I'm going to work on that. Thanks for reminding me. You're the second person that, pseudo bust my chops today.
Oh, no worries. I'm happy to. So your book totally blew up, which is amazing. Bestseller, I believe, right? I think
Yeah,
like
yeah.
just shot up
Amazon
to the
bestseller.
bestseller list.
Yeah, number 5.
That's so cool. And I could feel the shift in your posts. Like I just cut, just reading them. So just to be blunt or honest, I guess probably a better word. How much do you think your worth is riding on how it does? Because that's the exact trap it seems like it was written to break.
Great question. I know it's gonna sound nuts, and I hope this doesn't offend anyone. Look, I'd love for it to sell, but I don't think any of my worth is kind of dictated by this book. It would be great. Honestly, I wrote it because I wanted to get it out. I wrote it with these co-authors more than anything. I just wanted to get it out of my head. It was something I just felt like I had all these thoughts that I really wanted to get out of my head and put into some record, about, and I think it was incredibly, this was the theme of the word of the day, but intellectually stimulating to kind of go and say, look, I want you to forget Chameleon Collective for a second and really think about the principles of this and decouple it from the business and then really think about what that means for people. And I loved it. I had some of the most interesting conversations of my life sitting around talking with some of my co-authors and some of the other members of Chameleon Collective about what these things really meant, and I enjoyed that. But even if I just give copies to people for the rest of my life, like I'd be fine with that. I think it'd be great. I think it's a record of that. But in terms of my kind of worth or something, I think people probably put at least some of my clients and the people that work with me. I mean, I think they're more interested in like how do I help them grow their businesses and things like that, and And at the end of the day, that will continue to be what people pay me for. Like, how do I basically build and scale businesses for other people, or how do I help people find incredible teams and experts to do that?
I love that. Well, this is great. Thank you so much. I would love to I mean, people would love to know where to find you. I know you're on LinkedIn, but any things you wanna
I think the
shout
best
out?
place to find me is LinkedIn. So LinkedIn/IN/Freddie Laker. So always happy to hear from people there. The book's website is collectivecapitalism.org. So if you're interested in checking that out, great. If you want to learn a little bit more about Chameleon Collective, it's a chameleoncollective.com. We're happy for you to check that as well, and we can go from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That's a wrap for Revenue Mind, where we cut the BS and spotlight mental health and revenue leadership. I'm Jolie. We're reminding you your mindset is your competitive edge. Thanks for listening. See you next time.